Hello everyone, and welcome to another interview here on the channel. Today I have the absolute pleasure of bringing you Michael, Kramer, and Kate Redding, the voices behind such iconic series like Stormlight Archive and The Wheel of Time. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Very well, thank you.
It's been it's strange to talk and hear your voices after hearing them in my life for so long, but I imagine you hear that quite often.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many years now have you been doing audiobooks?
A little over 30. How old were you when you started listening?
I was, I believe, 11. So it's been 15 years, 14, 15 years of me listening to you all's audiobooks. So it's been, and many of them repeated several times. Have you been able to keep track of just how many books you have under your belt, or is that number just gone?
It's very vague.
Yeah. It never became like any kind of real marker of anything because, you do a book like Rhythm of War where it's like 57 hours and then you do a collection of short stories or a novella and it's like, okay, that was 6 hours. That was 4 hours, so numbers of books don't really make that much difference.
And a number of the books that we've done have now gone out of circulation because we've been doing them for so long.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's got to be up in that 800-900 something range.
Wow.
Each.
And I imagine currently you have some kind of booth set up at home, or was that always the case and recent world events haven't affected that too much?
Yeah, we have a home studio. We've had a home studio ever since we've been in this house, which is 23 years. When we initially started, we were in studios in other people's houses that they had set up. And then we both worked for the Talking Books program with the National Library Service, which is the books for blind and print disabled. When we bought the house, we built a studio into it, and then we gutted that one, added on, and kind of came up with a better version of that.
The original booth that we had in this house is in the basement, right under the entry to the front door. The kids were little when we moved in. In fact, one of them hadn't been born, and then she was born in this house a couple of years later. The problem with the basement booth that we originally had was that the kids could not walk anywhere in the house, including on either set of stairs. So they had to be like sequestered in their room. And if they did creep out to play, somebody would like open the door and be like, "I'm recording!" So they're deeply traumatized by our career.
Well, that leads to a pretty natural question here. I'm sure you've answered before, but I'd love to know, how exactly did you get into this career? Because it's one that wasn't exactly as well known the standard as it is today.
Way back when the internet didn't exist. We were recording on reel-to-reel machines. We work in the theater as well. We have a mutual friend, Grover Gardner, who is a giant in the industry, who was also working in theater. And he brought me in as an engineer for him. And so for 3 years, I worked in the studio that he worked at as someone on the other side of the microphone, just pushing buttons, listening, reviewing. And then eventually, the head of that studio saw me in a play and said, "You need to audition and start recording audiobooks." Did. And that's kind of where it began. And that was about, I was started behind the microphone or on the other side of the microphone about 1987. So that was my entry.
And the same friend, Grover Gardner, to whom we owe absolutely everything. I think I was waiting tables, doing theater, and maybe also working as a courier. And he suggested that I audition and apply for a job at the NLS studio where he was also working. And I applied and I was accepted as a monitor reviewer. So I spent a full year monitoring and reviewing, and honestly, best education for doing audiobooks, bar none, because you work with a variety of people. You get to understand the different styles of individual narrators and what it takes to put a book together and tell a story and craft the phrasing. So that was great. And then a year later, I started narrating for them. And then pretty much a year after that, I started working commercially.
Yeah, it was a very different industry then because of the technology. Audiobooks really got their birth, the audio cassette, because up until that time, I can remember listening to soundtracks on on LPs, if you can believe that, growing up. But that was pretty much it. And once you had the cassette that could be put into your car, because the Walkman didn't exist. So the idea of a portable cassette player would have been something, it's like it had to be batteries and be about the size of my iPad here, but 4 or 5 times thicker or whatever. When we got in, it was very much a nascent form. If you wanted to get an audiobook, you had to either send in something from a catalog that you got in the mail, or you called up a 1-800 number, which was itself a development, talked to a human being, and then they would write your order down, or they would be opening up your envelope with the order, and then it would go to the warehouse where somebody would pull, that stack of cassettes in that cardboard box, put the postage on it and address it and send it to you. So it could be, 5 days to 2 weeks before you actually got the book that you wanted to listen to. And that was if it was in, because they only made so many copies. If it was a popular book, there might be 100 copies. Well, imagine if there were 100 copies of Rhythm of War.
There would be a battle.
Yeah,
for those
exactly.
copies.
There would be knives out. But no. So when technology changed, and that's been great in terms of the boost of the industry, because when you can have the book on your phone or whatever device you want with about 5 clicks of your mouse, as opposed to having to wait weeks and then hoping that the last person to have that book didn't ruin the cassette by having a machine eat it, and you're like deep into it, and cassette 11, get out the pencil, rewind the tape, see, all that kind of stuff. So
the first time I ever heard y'all's voices was on a cassette. It was a little white cassette for The Eye of the World, and I got those and was playing them, and I wore them out. I actually destroyed them. So that was my introduction. And then my mom went, okay, CDs. And I managed to break that CD player too. So
yeah. Okay.
So with the direction this industry has gone and how available audiobooks are now, I imagine it's made the demand for your work just skyrocket, right? I imagine before it was you'd have consistent work, but it would be, the big releases. Now I'm sure there's requests daily, I would assume, to get Michael Kramer and Cade Redding to do a book.
It depends.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of ebbs and flows. And there are, we work with many, many different publishing companies. And it all depends, because there are lots of really popular narrators. So it's not like everybody wants us to do their book. Mm-hmm. And we work in a wide variety of genres. So it's kind of a nice grab bag of invitations to do different kinds of books. It's not one thing. It's not monolithic. And over the last year, we have reached out to independent authors and said, here's a website on our form. If you want to hire us, write to us, tell us about the project. And that, more than anything, has really increased our workload. Mm-hmm. And that's been really fun, because that's an opportunity to work with authors on these new works. They're all like self-publishing authors. Again, a wide variety of genres, everything from fantasy to mystery to a new kind of literature, like an educational business novel, which is totally intriguing.
It's really good.
And we love that, because it makes us feel a little less dependent on the whims of the publishing industry. Yeah. And a little bit more bolstered against those times when there are no books coming in, which happens to everybody.
Mm-hmm. The other thing with the distribution, it's now a lot easier to kind of set up a home studio. It used to be a 2-person operation at minimum, because the machinery was so noisy that it had to be outside of the space that you're actually recording. Now with solid state, hard drives, you can basically work from a laptop. It's just a question of creating a quiet room, as opposed to having to have a quiet room and then somebody in a room next to that room to manipulate the machinery, and hopefully there's nothing is bleeding in. So that's been a positive thing too, in that more voices can join the chorus, so to speak.
And for any of your listeners, watchers who are interested in getting into audiobooks, we get a ton of people asking us for advice. And the first place I send them to is acx.com. They have a whole list of tutorials. They have all the information you need about the equipment that you need, how to set up a studio, how to master your files, what the tech specs are, how to record, how to negotiate with authors. It's really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Great resource.
Right. And I will plug our friend Sean Allen Pratt's book, To Be a Wannabe, which it's a book he wrote both about the audiobook industry, but also about being an actor and just marketing yourself. Very tiny book. I think it's under $20, whatever, but just loaded with lots of good ideas in terms of what you kind of have to, the discipline of what I would call the business work that you have to do to get into the business, as opposed to the more aesthetic work that you have to do.
This is the thing about this intersection of art and business, which is true for the theater, for film, for any creative endeavor, any creative arts, especially performing arts. You know, your soul has to be as sensitive as dandelion seed. And you also have to have the hide of a rhinoceros to withstand the bizarreness of flogging yourself. And you probably understand this because you are also marketing yourself.
A little bit.
And that's a very weird, it's a very weird place to be. You know, it's like you have to kind of be careful when you're reading stuff online. You don't want to come across something somebody says on Reddit who absolutely hates your performance, because it can really shake your confidence, and you totally need your confidence. And at the same time, you have to be realistic, and you have to say, well, what's my market value? Mm-hmm. I think I'm worth this many $100 per, you know. Anyway, enough about it.
I can vouch for a lot of what you guys are saying, because I've used ACX and recorded a book through there. My brother's currently going through it as well. And it's a very rich field to be sowed right now, because there's so much available and there's so many works that need to be recorded. And it's an absolutely fascinating time. A lot of people think of the self-publishing boom and how it's great for authors, but it's great for narrators as well on both sides of things. So I imagine I have a lot of questions from fans here. I put to my Patreon, like, you know, hey, what do you guys want to know for my Clarion K writing? First of all, I just want to say the most amount of people just saying, I don't necessarily have a question. I just want you to tell them that I love them. So a lot of my fans are just huge fans of you. But I also had, the first question here is, understanding the incredible resume you all have under your belt, what is one book from like your own personal, you know, your own personal favorites that you would love to narrate or have the opportunity to narrate?
It happened to me in the sense that my Bible coming out of college was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I mean, it really had a huge impact on my life. And then when I was 38, after the birth of my son, our son, I was offered to narrate it. So I got to do it. I think, I don't know if there's something that I'm dying to do. I would do anything by Donald E. Westlake, but I did a lot of Donald E. Westlake already. So
it's one of the advantages of having that resume is you can go, I did it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was just it. That book meant a lot to me, and to be able to do it, especially having a son, as that is such a key part of that book. When you're approaching those works that you really admire, when you're working with an author that you go, oh my, this person can write, it's really humbling as a narrator. You don't want to misplace a syllable, because you feel like every comma, every period, every whatever has been so perfectly chosen, and you don't want to get in the way of that. And that's how I felt about doing Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I just wanted to make sure I was clear. And you know, we have a kind of a metaphor. You're the glass through which someone sees the story, and you want to be crystal clear, just crystal clear. Don't draw any attention to yourself, because the focus needs to be on the story, not on you.
And how about yourself?
So I loathe that question. Absolutely.
Oh, no.
Loathe it. I am one of those unfortunate people. People think I'm incredibly decisive, and I'm actually like debilitated by the process of making decisions. This is why Michael does all of the grocery shopping, because I go to the grocery store and I wander around the aisles weeping because the choices are overwhelming and I don't know what to get. And I leave not having bought the things that I went there for. So as with the theater, as with audiobooks, what I love is when a project arrives and I have no idea. I have I'm unfamiliar with it. And it's an invitation to a journey. And then I go on this journey. I'm always in love with whatever it is that I'm doing right now, whether it's acting in a role on stage or recording an audiobook. I'm just immersed in the book. There is no other thing I would rather be doing. And I don't, like, on my off time, I don't really think about, oh, I wish I could record such and such a book, because I guess it's more about the process than the destination for me. And so it's very exciting to just say yes to these projects that arrive and go on that journey, rather than spending my life going, I really, really, really want to record Madame Bovary before I die. And then what happens if you never do it? Then you're going to be disappointed with your whole life, as opposed to going, wow, look at this amazing gift that arrived. So yeah, I would say, like, anything that is well written is a gift. Mm-hmm. And most stories have something in them that you can fall in love with. And that's what's incredibly fortunate about being able to do this work.
Well, that's one of the most wholesome things ever said in my channel. That is beautiful. I love that. Now, you've mentioned, you've recorded everything from novellas to plays to big, huge fantasy epics. And, what's the mental kind of difference between accepting, like, oh, a novella project that's going to be a month versus, like, okay, you accepted the first Stormlight Archive book. Like, that's going to be a decade or so of your life working with Brandon on this series. Like, has there a lot of difference in terms of, like, your mental preparation, how you physically prepare for the book?
You walk around the house differently. that is one of the, like, when you're doing epic, you walk around like this, you're just like, whoa. And when you're recording one of those sneaky, nasty, like, cyber mysteries, you kind of slink. I don't know, it gets in your bones somehow. Your outlook is affected by the material that you're immersed in.
Yeah, there are books that when you're working on them, you like feel, I got to take a shower afterwards. I just have to get that off of my skin. I find, I don't know that I do any more preparation, other than there are times when I will go in and I'll just put on some, video, music videos, get me in the right frame of mind for whatever I do. I mean, I know that the theme from The Mission came on any number of times when we were working on Rhythm of War, Gabriel's oboe. When you walk in the booth and you sit down in front of the microphone, you have to drop the day, so to speak, to open yourself up to this print stuff. And it's important not to necessarily have the shopping list in the back of your mind, and or the frustration with the fact that your car needs a new, brakes or something like that. It's like, okay, that's all over. Right now, I'm with Bridge 4.
I think that's an angle that a lot of people forget about audiobook narration. It is a performance like acting. It's something you need to totally embody that character. Yeah, Dalinar Colin's not worried about his shopping list for the weekend.
Right. Mm-hmm.
What is your specific process for finding the voice of a character? Do you usually just kind of sit down and it comes? Is there, a week of studying their progression and arc? Like, how do you specifically try to find an individual's voice?
For me, it's all about the launch pad and what is on the page. Because if the writer is any good, they'll introduce the character. It's kind of like you see them down the end of the path and you get a description of their shape. and then they move towards you, and you get a description of their movement and their gait and their presence. And then you get maybe a description of their features. And then they open their mouth and they start to speak, and you get a description of their, and if that is all on the page, honestly, if you are immersed in that moment, you open your mouth and that voice comes out. And you know within a couple seconds if you're really wrong, because you'll stumble and you'll mispronounce words, and you'll have to stop and stop and stop. And then you're like, okay, this is wrong. I got to try this again. But if you get the character's voice right, you don't make mistakes. You don't stumble. The words come, they flow, because you're breathing the way the character breathes.
Right. I mean, you have the advantage of, obviously, you've read the book ahead of time, so you know the full arc of that particular character. But the text is going to give you 90% of what is going to actually come out of you, in the sense of what's their vocabulary, what's their syntax, and the physical description. And I do believe that you have to have a visual mental image of what the character looks like, that subtly shapes how you're holding your own body as that character is speaking, and where that character is holding tension, that affects your voice. I don't know that I plan anything, but other than when you read the book, you're just kind of paying attention to all the little markers for that particular character. Oh, this character in chapter 25 is going to do this. So they have that possibility. We need to see that in chapter 5 too, because it's not like, where did that come from? Unless that's what the author wants. But all of those things go into creating that three-dimensional picture of what they look like. And then the sound hopefully will kind of, between you and the text, that's kind of the mystery, so to speak. But I don't know that I ever plan anything. And then also, what are the demands of the particular scene that you're in? Because we all respond to different situations, and that affects our voices. You know, if you're a sergeant on the drill field as opposed to a sergeant kicking back a beer, in the PX, those are two different places. And what is how does the scene work that you're, coming across somebody?
I think also one of the most important things to incorporate when you're voicing a character is their intention, because you can have 3 seemingly identical characters, same age, same gender, same background, same class, same. And the thing that distinguishes them is their intentions, because one loves you, one wants to kill you, and the other one wants to run away. And they're all going to sound really different because of that. I'm doing a book right now. Okay, we always have to be careful about spoilers. So I might or might not be doing a book right now that involves a character who's been cloned, and I get to voice a scene with multiple clones who all have the same voice. It's really fun because they actually do sound all alike, but they want different things.
Right. So the subtlety there, the distinction is so small but so key.
Right.
Is there any characters for each of you that stand out as like the hardest ones you ever had to bring to life? Anyone that was extreme challenge throughout the whole, Wheel of Time, Stormlight Archive, Mistborn, anything that stands out?
So for me, the listeners are the most difficult to figure out. Really? They don't actually speak language. They use vibrations. They use rhythms. Their speech is described in musical terminology, which I can't use. So they have all these different rhythms, the rhythm of conciliation, the rhythm of yearning. That, to me, of all of Brandon's characters, those characters are the most puzzling, where you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm not sure. I need a music box instead of a voice box to be able, I want to be able to just sort of go like, instead of using English.
The hardest characters are the ones that are not necessarily drawn particularly sharply.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember way back when I first did Eye of the World, when I came across the 3-page monologue that introduces us to Loyal, and with the description of what he was. It was weeks before I got there in the actual narration of it, but I was spinning my wheels going, what am I going to do to make that happen? And it's got to be something that I can sustain, because oftentimes it's like, if it's just a one-off, that's not a problem. But when it's 3 pages, that's 10 minutes. And then it's a character we're going to see for the next however many years, off and on. I anguished over that, and I feel like I was very successful ultimately. You have to kind of trust your own mechanism, so to speak. And that's one of the things that the big fantasy novels make demands, in the sense of, okay, it's 50 hours. In this case, it was divided, but although that first book, I think there were 2 chapters that you had in the whole book?
Yeah, it was very mingy.
Yeah, and so I was like, 2 voices? What? She's got 2 chapters and I've got 40 hours? What is that?
I'm done. When are you going to be done?
Yeah. But, you met a wide spectrum. And there were times when they were like, okay, I'm going to write this as a vaudeville scene. Oh, okay, well, now we're in vaudeville. All right, okay, let's go with that. Now we're going to do something dark and murky, and all right, that's fun too. Those encourage you to explore the full range of what you actually have inside you in terms of voices. And don't be shy.
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
I can personally say your portrayal of Loyal and Kate, your portrayal of Pattern are 2 of my favorite vocal performances of all time. I think Pattern has gotten the most actual laughs out of me of pretty much any character ever. So no mating is stuck in my head forever.
Those are ringtones for some people.
Oh, absolutely. I would not doubt it. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up here a little bit, I just wanted to mention, like, all the links you guys mentioned, I'll absolutely have in the description down below for people to check out, your own personal ones for indie authors to find you, as well as the theater group you said you're working for. Absolutely. Make sure I get those and I'll have them for sure. But I also had one more question that I think a lot of people really want to know, and that is how you were selected for Wheel of Time and the Stormlight Archive.
Well, way back in, the digital age of, chipping on the stone tablets, Robert Jordan was insistent that he wanted male-female voices, which was almost unheard of back then. Really? Yeah, because it created, because you were narrating on reel-to-reel in many cases. Well, we were just moving past that. I think at that point we may have been on DAT. But linear, editing was a real issue. Mm-hmm. You couldn't just go, okay, we're going to take this track and we're going to paste it in here. Well, that meant taking a razor blade, cutting the tape, taking the tape, putting it in, taping it together. Now make a high-speed copy of that. And hope that all those splices don't come tearing apart as you're spinning the wheels. But he was absolutely insistent that he wanted to have a male and female point of view in the narration of this. We were married. We shared a studio. And at that point, we would literally tag team.
Wait, but who asked? How did we get the invitation?
The rights were with Books on Tape, which was Duvall and Sigrid Hecht at that point. And they looked at, okay, who's our male and female team? Because no one did that. And they knew that we were married, and we'd actually had dinner with Sigrid a number of times when she was out. And so she was like, this is the team that we have. Plus, I had already done the Kent Family series and North and South, which were these epic historical novels we had facilities with character voices because not all narrators do, and that, you know, you don't have to have that to be a successful narrator by any means, but they knew that we did. So I think between the fact that we could share a studio, which made coordinating the on and off, you know, in and out, especially when you're changing narrators every 2 to 3 pages, and you literally just have to kind of sit on the side and wait until you can get in there to do your section. I think that had a large part of why we were selected. That and the fact that we both had facility with character voices.
And then the rights were transferred to a few different companies. Mm-hmm. There are actually, I think, 2 or 3 of the Wheel of Time books that we recorded a second time because the rights were bought by someone else, and they couldn't use the original recording, and so we re-recorded it.
Divorces are messy, I think that was.
Yeah, and of course, Brandon was a rising epic fantasy author star, and so he was a logical person to invite to finish the Wheel of Time, and that sort of deepened our relationship with him.
Right. Before he finished Wheel of Time, they asked me to do the first trilogy of Mistborn while he was still getting all the notes and kind of combing through, and that's when they made the decision while he was doing that they were, this is not going to be 1 book, it's going to be 3. But before those got released, they asked me to do the Mistborn series. So that worked out. I mean, I had a ball, and I think Mistborn, the second generation, is probably some of my most shameless narration, because it's very funny. Wax and Wayne are really fun characters to work on. I'm actually glad that there are multiple voices for some of the other things that Brandon does, because he's writing all the time. But I was happy that I was able to do Warbreaker for the Talking Books program, because there are things from Warbreaker that travel in the Cosmere, so to speak. Several characters who, if you happen to have the Warbreaker there, you'll find them in Rhythm of War.
But I do want to say thank you so much for being willing to come on the channel and talk with me today. It's been an absolute delight. Kind of surreal for me to finally hear the voices not telling a story.
Thank you. And thank you also for helping us fundraise for Books to Prisoners, because that is a cause that we are very committed to helping.
There will be links down below as well as in the pinned comment on this video, so please be sure to check that on out. And guys, I'll go ahead and cut the recording here. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Again, it is just amazing to meet you guys. I was dyslexic growing up, so I couldn't read the books I wanted to get through, and so y'all's voices helped me. So I'd read along with you just endlessly.
Yeah. We have heard from so many fans who had dyslexia and who credit these long epic fantasy series with teaching them to read, rekindling their love of reading, leading them in some cases to go back to school, to become authors themselves. Like, it is truly remarkable what a learning tool it is. Yeah. That's why the NLS program is so key, because if you are dyslexic, you have the right to use that program and get all these free books. We've known of several people who got through high school using audiobooks from the Library of Congress, and nobody seems to know about that program.
Yeah, constantly going, what? Never heard of it.
Yeah,
you know, and it's free.
Well, I'm to be honest, I'm unaware of what exactly this is. I'm not familiar.
Hire Us page on our website. There are 2 emblems for NLS Bard. And if you click on that, it takes you to the Library of Congress link to explain the program. It is a program that has existed for decades.
Yeah.
And
since the 50s, I think.
It is basically, it's part of an effort to make sure that people who cannot read print are not denied access to that material. So they have hundreds of thousands of books in audio form. I think the very first one was done on LP, Alexander Scorby, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just put the needle down, he starts reading. No stopping for mistakes. You just keep going because the LP is recording and that's the book.
Right. Very rarely would they go back and correct a sentence, but you just did it. So you had to be prepared very, very well for the...
And also the listener would have to forgive you the stumbles, which are natural.
Right.
But in any case, what's so sad is that very few people know about this program. It is free to anyone who is print disabled or legally blind. So dyslexic or something wrong with your hands, you can't hold a print book. For all of those, you have access to all of these free audiobooks. And I don't understand why everybody doesn't know about this program.
Right.
It's crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Put a link on there for the blind and print disabled.
And print disabled can be anything. I mean, it can be if you're having Parkinson's, if you broke your arm, if you're laid up for whatever reasons, and you cannot physically hold a book. All it takes is a note from your doctor, and you are qualified. And now with the Bard app, essentially, it's allows you to download the book from their library right to your phone or whatever device you want to listen to it on. It's we have both narrated for the program, so there are hundreds of books in both our names. With them.
My other name.
Warbreaker is there, my version, as opposed to the commercial version. Active Congress said this is going to be free. We're not going to pay any royalties, but you have to, you have to be qualified for it, and then they will send you the app.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
If you guys don't mind, I'll just keep this segment in and we'll have a pitch for this for people to see in the interview, if that's all right with you.
Great.
Yeah. No, I mean,